Man, this really tastes like ginger ale.
There you go. That's good. Ginger ale's good.
It really is. I know.
Yeah.
McDonald's was. I went to McDonald's today, and they kind of push the Sprite on you. They were pushing.
Did you get the
Verner's.
Grimace shake?
No, but I didn't get anything. I did get a coffee.
I didn't see that advertisement.
It was a weird advertisement. Like, what is going on? And what flavor is the Grimace shake?
We went there today specifically to try and get it, and as soon as we walked up to it, the signs said, "We are out of the Grimace shake."
Wow.
Bullshit.
What flavor is it supposed to be?
No
idea. No.
Absolutely no clue.
Okay.
Purple.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the flavor.
Purple flavor, yes. Purple drink.
I've seen that for gum before. It's just like red flavor. Okay, I guess that makes sense to me.
Blue flavor is a flavor, to be fair. So everybody knows what
blue raspberry in particular.
Yes.
Yeah,
I know. And on top of that, it's like there's literally no such thing as a blue raspberry. So to the best of my knowledge,
but I know
there's so many red candies.
When you give me a blue
like cherry,
raspberry,
watermelon, blue raspberry is always one of the best.
Oh yeah,
no doubt.
And watermelon doesn't taste like watermelon. Banana doesn't taste like banana. But
definitely not.
Artificial banana is one of the worst.
It's not good.
I would argue on.
Ooh,
I know. Yeah, some people love those Laffy Taffies. Those those are like
Oh, the banana runts.
Those are I was just gonna say those are the worst of the bunch, man. No pun intended on the bunch.
Boo.
I truly didn't mean that either. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with John Hines.
Hey there.
And Randall Nolery.
Hey, folks.
And we are back, as always, to talk about some video games, and we can just pretty much dig right into the action. Randall, I know you've been chipping away at a game that we've touched on a few times, so why don't we start off with that and then dig into some more stuff, and then maybe close out with some Zelda. I feel like we'll dig in deeper into that, so we'll save that for the end of the episode and go from there.
Just dig right into a chasm of Zelda later on. But right now, talk about.
I love it. And I'm already thinking about what I'm playing. I'm like, we're already making puns left and right. Here we go.
Resident Evil 4. So this will be the closeout, because I did in fact beat Resident Evil 4 Remake.
I had a feeling.
Me too. Yeah, I had to stick with this thing. Although, like I had said last time, I took like a 10-day break because Zelda Tears of the Kingdom just like inserted itself right in the middle of all of that, and I have to start this right now.
Yeah.
Especially because, seeing a online, random things are going to get spoiled for me just by like seeing
a random clip or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I have to play Zelda, but like, then just like, I'm like, we're going to record another podcast. Oh yeah. I just, I'm still thinking about Resident Evil 4. Like, man, I just still really like that game. And I went back, and at first it was like, the control scheme just taking me a second to like flip between these two things. They're so like diametrically
opposite.
Apart.
Exactly opposite. Yeah.
But, man, just again, like riding a bike once I got going with it. I'm like, and I was so close to the end as it was. It only took like one session beyond where I was when I stopped to talk about it the last time I talked about it. So like, I was basically on the precipice of, the final boss. It just had been long enough that I had forgotten that, I guess this game is
not all that long. Yeah.
If you don't dick around like I do, this is like a 20-hour game max. Like this is, and I was that close to the end, and it's, I don't know if I can say a lot new that I didn't already say before, but if you enjoyed Resident Evil 4, if it ever piqued your interest, I think this is the best way to play Resident Evil 4, this remake, and on, modern consoles. I think it even came out on PS4, if I remember correctly. But man, they did all the rough edges that might have even been there before, I feel like have been sanded down, but not in a way that takes away from the personality of it all or anything, right? It just,
nice.
It's the perfect remaster that way. To me, I adore that game, and I know they're going to do being Capcom, they love their DLC. So, I have a hard time believing that they won't do the Separate Ways DLC, which came out with the original Resident Evil 4 as a part of the PlayStation 4 release. It wasn't part of the GameCube release.
Okay.
Which made me jealous back in the day, but then was added when they released it on Wii. So I'm hoping that we get that DLC to play as Ada Wong, who, interstitially.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
She's involved in Leon's campaign as kind of like a side character that helps you, but you don't quite trust her. And like Leon's just a big dumb anyway. So, he thinks through his muscles. But that's fine. Go along. It's all part of the roller coaster ride. But yeah, Ada is there to like help you, and she just kind of gives you what you need, and here's some keys to a jet ski and whatever else, and like here's a rocket launcher, blah blah blah. But she's got her own separate campaign, and I really hope that Capcom releases that soon, because I want the excuse to go back, let alone the Mercenaries mode, which is another thing that kind of got popular with the original release of that and kind of Resident Evil 5, and has been kind of a mode they've used a few times in subsequent releases, but is also part of Resident Evil 4.
Is that kind of like a horde mode sort of thing?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Just kind of like open-ended. Here's all the different enemies. Here's just a collection of different things. Just stay alive as long as you can.
Survival sort of thing. Yeah. Can you play that co-op? Do you remember? Or?
I don't know. I still haven't booted it up. I just was basking in the glow of I beat Resident Evil 4 and then just pivoted right back to Zelda, basically. So
Yeah, it's a good thing those are on separate platforms, so you didn't have to worry about I got to swap out the cartridge or disc or whatever.
Yes, that would have been very difficult that way. Yes.
Yeah.
Is it does it have a Switch release or no plans for that?
No, not that I've seen. No, I think.
Although they've done those cloud download versions for the previous Resident Evil remakes, so maybe if those did well enough, maybe there's a little hope for it. But
yeah, because I was like, I do want. I know that Resident Evil 4 is the classic and well regarded as a masterpiece on GameCube and I've never played the original, and you talking about this is I've never played a Resident Evil game, and I was you're doing a good job selling it.
Yeah, this was the first one that I played super seriously. Like I'd said before, I was too much of a scaredy cat to play the original Resident Evil remake that happened on GameCube. I'd bought it. I'm like, I'm scared. I even tried to take it back to GameStop. I remember they're no, you can. But
even still, the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes that they did recently, those didn't interest me, and I don't know why, but this one does, and maybe it's
definitely a different type of gameplay.
Yeah,
it's a different game for sure. Although I haven't played the 2 and 3, but just what I've seen.
I feel like John in particular, I think you might find yourself into it, both based on your humor and your familiarity with this sort of GameCube era.
Yeah,
and I feel like John, I could see John really resonating with the inventory system.
Yeah, that too, for sure.
All that stuff. I just feel like there's a lot of stuff in this game that's ooh, John would like that.
Yes.
And even I would like that in some regard. I don't see myself running out to pick it up, but it's if I'm ever browsing at a random game shop and I see a physical copy for cheap and I've got a PS5 or Xbox Series X or whatever down the road, it's then maybe I'll grab it cheap. But
I think it's a no-brainer, especially if it gets down to bargain bin, since it's still relatively early on in this modern generation. Yeah, it's spectacular.
I'll play it in 10 years. Yeah,
awesome.
Hey, nice.
It'll still be good.
Yeah,
because the game ultimately didn't change that much from when it released in 2005. Yeah. So yes,
God,
it'll still be good.
The 20th anniversary. Yeah, that's
seriously. What I'll play on. Yeah. Oh man, well I wasn't planning on going right into this, but this is actually too perfect of a transition because I watched. There's been all these recent showcases on the summer game announcement events are all going on. I think E3 didn't happen. I can't remember now, but everybody's been doing this showcase, that showcase, even some smaller indie, they just call, a lot of people just call them directs. There's this wholesome direct that showcases a bunch of wholesome cozy style games. And then but Capcom did a showcase, and I saw everybody all of a sudden was tweeting about it. Capcom showcase. I was okay, let me hop on and see what's going on. And then they announced that Ghost Trick Phantom Detective game, they were they kind of showed a little bit about it and and there's a demo for it right now. And I had been thinking about, I talked about this game, I think even on a Save It for the Cast, or maybe when Randall and I were doing like our retro hunting. Yeah. And I was kind of like, this is a game I always wanted to play, and now it's like $200 or whatever on DS. Like, I'm never going to get it. Although I think I did, when I was looking this game up, I could be misspeaking because I ended up streaming the demo after they announced it, like not right after, but a couple days later. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to check that out because I'm curious how the touchscreen, like being that it was a DS game originally, and I think they did port it to mobile because when I looked it up, I thought I saw it as like on the App Store or something. I could have just seen something out of the corner of my eye, but I thought I kind of have a vague recollection of that. But I was like, well, I wonder how it's going to work on the Switch. Are they going to use touch controls and it's going to be a game that you want to maybe play handheld, or how's it going to work? But at least in the demo, I don't think they allow touch controls. I was playing handheld, and I ended up playing on the TV when I was streaming, but you pretty much have to use like the joystick, and it feels very much like, I've never played the Ace Attorney games, but it feels like it's kind of like a hybrid, and I'm partially thinking this because it's Capcom too, but the way the presentation is done, and it's kind of like these story beats, and it's kind of like this mystery detective game, and it's just got such an amazing, stylish presentation. Like, I was a little bit bummed, I will say, and I mentioned this while I was streaming too, like, it's so crisp in HD now. I kind of miss like that pixelated, like 2D, like sort of pseudo 3D look on the DS. It still has that pseudo 3D stuff going on, and it still looks awesome, but it's like I kind of miss that, like, like how a Short Hike has those like pixels that just kind of like are soft looking, or polygons that are soft looking. So like I missed that a little bit. Like, this has this crisp style, but the demo was pretty dang long. Like, I played through, I felt like almost like 2 or 3 little like short chapters, but I kept like going and going. But I was like, it seems like it's just the start of the game. Like, it seems like if I buy this game, I'm going to be able to pick up my save file from here. So I kept playing, and it's just so cool. Like, every concept, like to travel to different areas, you're playing as this like dead character. It kind of reminds me of the premise, reminds me a little bit of Pushing Daisies, the TV show, if anyone's familiar with that. Like in that show, like, the character can like touch someone who's dead, bring them back to life for like a minute or something like that, and then they can touch them again and they die. And if they don't touch them again, they stay alive forever. That, I guess that concept's not in here, but basically like you're dead. You're dead for 24 hours, but you have 24 hours until the morning comes or something, to like save this girl's life. Like, you kind of wake up as this like dead body in your soul and just watching, oh shit, this girl's about to die. But then you like can rewind time 4 minutes and like see what happened. And then basically it goes into this like kind of real time freeze time combination. You have to do some stuff like, let me jump. Like, there's like all these little soul points on not every element, but a lot of the interactive elements in the screen. So like, okay, let me go over and possess this refrigerator with my soul, and then open the refrigerator doors so that it's closer to this other thing so that I can reach the bicycle, and then possess that bicycle and pedal the pedals so that it moves down the track a little bit. Like, there's all these
making
things.
Making a Rube Goldberg machine.
Kind of, yeah. It kind of is like that, and it even feel like you'd have to like get the timing down. Like, there's one part where I had to like get this string into a blender, and then like that would raise the flag, but then I had to like time it right so that I could possess the flag while it got raised. It's crazy, and it's kind of all real time, and because there's a real like kind of like sand timer off to the right that's like, okay, time's ticking, hurry up. And it was a little annoying, like some of the tutorializing. It's like, hey, it keeps like interrupting, like, make sure you do this in time, or make sure you whatever. But it started to feel like, man, it feels like once this game opens up past these opening scenes, like you're really going to have some free form solutions. It's not going to be just a scripted, it'll be more Hitman style, where maybe there's like 3 or 4 different things that you can do to solve a puzzle. But just the presentation's amazing. Like, to travel from scene to scene, I don't think I finished this thought. You like dial the different location through the rotary phone, so you have to like possess the phone and then travel through the phone lines to get to a different location. And just it's just such a cool. So I wasn't even planning on talking about this game, but I had it written down. But I was just like, that Capcom transition is just too good. I had a lot of fun streaming it. I played like almost an hour of it, and still I cut it short. Like, the demo didn't end. I was just like, nice. I just feel like playing something else, so I'm going to jump over to something else. And then I guess I'll just talk about this one briefly because I feel like it's a game in a series that everyone knows. But Shovel Knight, they just released a new DLC for that Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon game, which I picked up on Switch as soon as they announced the DLC. And actually, so the game came out, like, now Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon is available if you have Netflix. You can download it on mobile, so now it's on I don't know if you can get it on mobile outside of Netflix, but like they kind of like were talking about how they oriented the game to be played on a vertical screen and, just reformatted some of the menus because I'm playing on Switch here. So I saw the DLC was out. So I was like, I never even picked up that game. And sure enough, because the DLC, it was half off. So it was only $10 instead of 20. And the DLC was free. It's not like a paid DLC. And apparently they're planning on doing 3 more DLCs for this game that are free. So I'm like, holy shit, or at least 2 more. The seriously
paradigm of just releasing more content than you could have ever imagined.
Stuffing your guts full of goodness. Like I could just play just this game. And I'm not going to say that it's like my favorite game ever or anything like that. I'm kind of at a weird point because it's really, really fucking hard. Like unbelievably hard. It's kind of like it's way more than match 3. Like I'm getting like 35 chain combos. So like but it's essentially like a match 3 puzzler, but it plays like, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around it because it's like a top down perspective and it moves like you're just moving up, down, left, right. And it's almost more like a roguelike or roguelite style gameplay. Like you play until you die, you pick up some upgrades and buffs along the way, or like items you'll pick up a shield that'll block 2 damage for 12 turns or whatever, or 12 like attacks that you do, but you're basically, just like in a roguelike or turn-based like old school RPG, you're just bumping into enemies to attack them, and then whatever enemy you attack, any other enemy of the same type that's touching it will take the same amount of damage. And then but like for example, even on the first stage, like so there's like these slime blobs or whatever, I forget, or there's some kind of beetles or something. I forget what they are on the first stage, but you can get like a pretty easy combo on those. They just take like 2 attacks, but you're taking damage every time you attack something, unless you are watching, or unless you have like a shield or some kind of, item that blocks it. So like these skeletons, when you attack them, like they do 2 damage. You have 5 health with Shovel Knight. And there's like, you can unlock virtually every character in Shovel Knight is a playable character in this game. So like King Knight has an ability where you can like dash across the screen. Shield Knight gets like buffs and, barriers that block attacks every time you get a combo. So they're like, every character has like a distinct play style. Nothing crazy, just like one ability, except for Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight's just basic. I think you get like an extra attack point or something on your chains, but nothing like that you press a button to activate or anything.
He's the Mario.
But yeah. Essentially, yeah. But it's got like a very similar art style, but like a way more like bold and like kind of zoomed in, almost like a chibi art style going on. Like everything's like a little more cutesy, a little more like overly animated, or just like over expressive. Not over, that's not the right word, but just like, everyone's kind of exaggerated expressions and stuff like that. But it's really like, again, most roguelikes you maybe go through like 4 or 5 different zones and then there's like the final battle or whatever. This is like, I'm getting through like 6, 7, 8 zones and it just keeps fucking going. And every zone is like new types of enemies. And again, I didn't even finish. Like, so when you attack those skeletons, like if you're full health and you go to kill the skeletons, you're down to 1 hit point after that. So there's like potions you have to constantly be grabbing as well. And then grab those potions to try to set up different chains. But there's like, just different like portals you can go into, like, I found this secret tile and now I can jump in here and do a little mini game or do a little collect 3 keys. And it's very similar to kind of grindstone style, like grid. You got this, like, you're just working your way through the board. You got to like kill enough enemies or like basically just make enough progress. And then like, but the difficult thing is like, it plays this top down perspective, but everything also plays like the puzzle pieces are still falling from the top. And then it says like time moves slow when you're not moving, but it still moves pretty fucking fast. It just doesn't move as fast as when you're moving, because otherwise it like time moves when you move, kind of super hot style, I guess. Makes sense. It's still like things keep like you'll get boxed in really quickly, and like if you're low on health and you're surrounded by skeletons, it doesn't matter. It's like they can tell you can take your time all you want, but if you're surrounded by tough enemies, there's not much you can do. But yeah, they like later on they're throwing like these crystal crabs at you that take like 8 hits, so you got to be like hitting them 3 times. Or shield enemies that like when you attack them from above, they like throw their shield up, and then you got to move around them to attack them from the other direction. But you're almost like thinking of it from top down, but also side on. I can't quite like wrap my head around what I'm supposed to be looking at it from.
So are there like difficulty levels that like are you playing, or is it just like one set difficulty level that you're playing on?
I actually finally cracked after like quite a few runs after playing on like the 1 stock mode. You can go to infinite stock mode, which basically plays like puzzle mode, but it's still fucking hard as hell. Like so now the only way you can lose, you don't lose by you still die if you kind of like time starts rushing forward and the board starts filling up real quick and then you respawn 2 seconds later, 3 seconds later, but obviously in a more precarious situation. But if the board fills up, you still lose. So I'm still like, sometimes even on the first stage, sometimes if I have like an unlucky, make a couple dumb mistakes, like I'm losing on the first stage sometimes, even in this puzzle mode. And you can go anywhere. I like, there's a limit at some point, but I think you can do like up to like 25 stocks. You can do 1, 2, 3. You can kind of just set the difficulty however you want. And it does prompt you with that right at the very first time you play. It's like, do you want to play in like one stock mode where it's essentially like a roguelite, or do you want to play more like a match 3 puzzle game with infinite stock? And I obviously lean towards the more difficult approach most times, but it's still, again, I'm still like, it's not like I'm lacking a challenge playing in this puzzle mode. So I'm having a lot of fun with it, but it is because it's so hard and because the runs are a little bit longer. Not that they take a particularly long time, but like it just feels like a little bit of an investment. Like you're really thinking about most of your moves other than in the very early going. So it's not a game that I'm just like kind of playing mindlessly. Like I mentioned Grindstone. I'm not going to really talk about it, but I've been, because I'm like, I want to play something with that flavor, but
not so mentally intensive. I don't want
to. Yeah. And Grindstone, you got to, think about your moves too, but you really can take as much time as you want between turns. There's no real time element to that game at all.
Right.
So I've been having fun bouncing between those two games among other games, but yeah, those have been kind of my main go-tos, and it's just nuts. It makes me really want to pick up Shovel Knight Dig. I know you were kind of like just lukewarm or medium on that one, Randall, when you fired it up on Apple Arcade, but I'm like, got to round out. I was kind of hoping they would both be on sale, to be honest, but I was like, I'll take them one at a time because this one's definitely got plenty of meat on the bones.
I think that's fair. So just wait for a sale. It'll be worth it at that point for sure,
Yeah, exactly.
Just give it a flyer.
Exactly. Yeah, but yeah, like I said, I wasn't planning on talking about Ghost Trick there, but it was just too good, and that demo's awesome, so I recommend checking it out. But
Capcom's been on fire.
They really have. They showed off a few other games that looked pretty cool that I had never heard of. Like they showed off some weird like Dino fighting game and some other. It wasn't Dino Crisis, but it was like some kind of like MMO looking thing. It looked kind of cool. It looked kind of like I don't know, kind of like Monster Hunter.
Another Monster Hunter-ish.
Yeah, sort of, but like more
they're
with
not
like
monsters. They're dinosaurs.
Like yeah. But yeah, I know I mentioned at the top that we'd probably be talking some Zelda stuff, so why don't I kick it over to you guys, because I have yet to play any more of this game since last time we chatted. So sticking to my guns.
Yeah, not surprised on that one as much, but that's, boy, Zelda.
Where do we want to even start, man?
I will say I've been enjoying like living vicariously through like in our Discord and stuff, like just seeing the posts and like just enjoying everyone else's enjoyment of the game. So I've just like resigned myself to like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy others' enjoyment. I'm happy to dig in and discuss it, but I'm like, I'm just, it isn't for me, and that's all. I don't need to think about it beyond that.
Yeah. So like, I'm about 35 hours in now. I wish I had more hours. I did my first chasm exploration 30 hours in, which I think is a lot longer than most people, once again. But that's just kind of how I roll with these things. So I got the camera functionality about that time.
Yes.
So that's,
oh my God.
That's kind of nice. That kind of helps too with certain things, so.
Yeah, not to mention the paraglider, because I think last time we talked, you said you had not found that yet. So.
I didn't. No, I was actually going through the game and just, getting blown up in the air and then just falling and splatting.
And to your death. Like just certain death. Oh my God.
Hey, I still beat a decent amount of shrines even without it. I just you kind of made it work, and which I kind of liked. And then, I just love coming out the other side like that much more powerful. And, now I'm doing the things I should have done 20 hours ago, but I'm just like just mowing over these enemies and scenarios.
Right, a little more beefed up, a little more familiar with the gameplay and stuff. Yeah.
Finally unlocking towers now. I've got like 5 or 6 of those unlocked at this point, because that's something I'm deciding that I should probably focus on now that I can survive in the air. And so that's been good. I have 2 stamina wheels. That helps my cause a lot now too. And I'm like, I'm good with 6 heart. Like I was like, I'm good with 5 hearts. I don't need more hearts than that. And then I went into the chasm, and I'm like, oh no, I definitely need more than the 6 hearts I'm even with right now. I kind of need to focus on that a little bit more, considering, okay, I guess spoilers-ish.
we're just gonna get
fair warning for some spoilers. Game's been out for a while, but John's played over 200 hours of this game, so yeah.
It's all Zelda and basketball from here, folks. So you go into the chasm and you get touched by the goo or stuff or the enemies, and then your heart or the container of your heart turns like what is it like broken
cracked
artifact, right? You can't use it anymore, right?
Your maximum health is reduced by 1.
Correct.
Permanently, or until you spawn again,
until you find another light root.
Yes.
Or you eat food that replenishes the broken hearts.
Yes.
But yeah, that comes into play much later in the game when you get to there are, I don't know if you've encountered a Colosseum yet.
No, not yet, but that does not surprise me that comes into play in a number of regards. And I saw that mechanic, I'm like, oh, hearts are important. Now I understand.
Hearts are important. Having food that regenerates and clears those broken hearts is important.
Yes.
Because I have, multiple times would be, in one of those Colosseums, which are, as you might imagine, just, a series of battles that you fight. And then I get to, halfway through and I'm like, I don't have any other meals that will replenish these broken hearts, so I just need to bail.
And I just wasted all that cooking I did from before.
It's great. For me, I'm like hell yes, I need to prepare more, I need to have stronger weapons, I need to have stronger equipment. I love the seeing testing the waters of how far I can go in any direction and any context. The game has so many different ways to play it.
Yes.
That and it's the I think I may have mentioned it when I discussed Fantasy Life, where this game in particular and Fantasy Life, everything you do makes something else later easier.
Yes.
And then you can move so you are always progressing no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And that is so satisfying. It's also satisfying because for me personally, everything I do in this game is satisfying.
Yes.
So even I'm never just in a way that when I play Genshin or when I play any other JRPG and it's okay, I'm just going to do the same thing over and over again and grind it out.
There's a grind that you're accepting,
No, and that's exactly right, though, because even with Elden Ring, which I loved, that was my game of the year, but I sure as shit spent hours grinding effectively in that game, and I never, ever feel compelled to, quote-unquote, grind in this game. That's I'm doing different things, and yes, I'm making myself more powerful, but it's always a satisfying loop, and it doesn't feel like, oh, I have to do this because the game's gatekeeping me from having a real solid chance of doing this or that otherwise.
And whenever I run into a wall where it's I'm in the chasm and I'm I run out of Bright Bloom seeds, and it's well, I just can't do this right now, and then I'll go and do something else, and then I'll realize 10 hours later, it's oh my god, I have 100 Bright Bloom seeds. I can go back into the chasm.
Yes, you get a lot of the those game pretty quickly.
I think a really strong thing about Tears of the Kingdom in comparison to Breath of the Wild is that it throws so much more at you in a way that you don't run into scarcity in the same way. You still run into hard limits where it's oh, I'm out of this, I can't do it. But you have a dozen other things you can do.
Or different options,
And as you do those dozen other things, it just naturally replenishes because there are more instead of one you encountering one animal, most animals are in packs, or most bokoblins now will carry items that there's the ones that just have an entire backpack full of meat. So you're not even specifically going out and trying to hunt, but then you just as you're playing the game and naturally exploring, you're just accumulating this stuff.
Yeah.
In a way that is very useful. And a thing that I've realized is that I think a thing that Tears of the Kingdom does, especially at the point of the game where I'm at now, is it removes all friction. And like there are so many things that I'm like, oh, I want to do this, and it's like I have different sets of tools I can use to accomplish that.
Yep,
it's
the materials
not
are on your person. You can figure something out.
Yeah, and it never is the same like set of tools. Like,
yep,
and like it gets to the point where like I'm like presented with a situation where I'm like, okay, I know what I know what the best solution is. Mm-hmm. What's the dumbest solution I can possibly do? And like, I will just go for like, I was like, I bet this works. And it does.
Yes.
Like, that's incredible. It's a great feeling.
I do feel like, I feel like you have to have that kind of brain. Well, you don't have to have that kind of brain to enjoy this game, but
it helps.
The people I've been seeing enjoying this game the most are like, look at how I did this Addison puzzle by attaching 45 different things to the top of this NPC's head.
Yes.
And like it somehow balances perfectly and it just works. There's nothing even supporting it. And I'm like, it is funny to see like that thing that you sent in our band text thread, John, of like that kind of like almost like it felt like a like Chuck E. Cheese like stage show, almost like the those I think it was Hudson character. Yes. You said those like stand up cardboard cutouts, like dancing around and doing whatever. Like it was like, this is cool, but for me, I would not find it fun to build that in the game just because just for whatever reason. But I totally like watching a quick clip of it. In the back of my brain, I can't help but think, how fucking long would it take me to do that? But at the same time, I'm like, that is fucking funny. I can't not laugh watching it. So,
but I have to say, I think the auto build feature. Have you even unlocked that, Randall, yet?
Nope.
Man, like I think we've talked like in private a lot about just how much we've enjoyed like encountering things at different speeds, or how it's like not a linear gameplay where you are always encountering the same things at the same time. I really think auto build should be a little bit more linear and more upfront, because it's just so much it makes so many more things like easily accessible. Like I know specifically like the things, Kevin, that you like really ran into in this game and like weren't fun for you, like auto build just solves.
I was just going to say, I would have been a little more motivated to spend the extra time. Like, okay, instead of just like brute forcing my way through this solution to just get it over with, I would have been like, okay, let me build this right, get the balance right, because then I'd know I could just snap it together again and make that vehicle again so that I, get from point A to point or whatever I'm trying to build. Like, I definitely, because someone in our Discord, Cardboard Moon, mentioned that ability, and right away I was like, okay, that's going to make things a little easier for me. And I never found it. I didn't play much, but
it's also not evident. Like it's not something that you can like just like. I found it, I feel, pretty late in the game, like probably the same way that like, well, when I say late, I mean like 40 hours in, like,
but still for something they could have, considering how they just throw you to the wolves right at the beginning, like they really could give you that right up front.
I mean, it's
right. There's really no reason to not, especially
other than to not overcomplicate it, but it's already so complicated. It's like, what are you worried about? At that point,
the construction stuff is very front loaded in my experience too. Like I would say the last 15-20 hours that I've played of this game, and granted, like all that's baked in with like the construction, physics of it all, I'm way more familiar with, and even the small like attach this to this, I can do a lot faster, and I'm rotating a lot faster. But there's less of that stuff being like quote unquote forced on me than there was in those first initial areas where like, no, this is what we're really going to make sure that you understand this.
You can't get across this water any other way other than building this boat right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like, it is wild how like not necessary that is. Like as soon as you get into the game, like
correct.
It is such a small part of the game, but it does like front load it just where it's seasoning. Like absolutely like it is necessary at the beginning, and like for specific puzzles, like especially when you're very early on and you don't have all of these tools. But like the way that it introduces it is to like kind of get you to start thinking about solving puzzles in different ways. Like that's the thing that I really love about the shrines in particular, is that they are giving you a specific scenario or a specific puzzle and then giving you the tools and be like, here's a way that you can solve this. And then like once you like internalize that in the shrine, then you can take that out into the world and be like, oh my God, I never thought about taking that and like incorporating that into just like my everyday exploration.
Absolutely.
And like, I think that's a really good way to design is what is essentially a tutorial.
Yeah,
but like
even like pre-builds, right? Like pre-builds
make
of
it
like,
into a puzzle.
Yeah, you can attach these to thing like, and it's already pre-built for you. I'm like, oh, okay. Like now I get like, there's some certain designs that I can make, and I didn't realize how like easy and like, oh, if I just attach this fan and then this like control thing to a bird, then I can have a little flying. You know, oh, I see. It isn't just a glider. This could be like
this
a
isn't just me
jet.
stepping. And just like shifting my weight. I can control this thing. Which I never got to any like controlled. Vehicles. And another thing, like while you guys have been talking to, it's kind of interesting because for me, like the survival elements that were obviously there in Breath of the Wild 2, I feel like it was, for me, it felt more of like an interesting wrinkle that was added to like the Zelda formula, where now they're going all in on the survival side of things. Like even I felt like I wasn't going into particularly difficult territories, and I was just getting, I think I mentioned this before, but I was just getting one shot by like almost anything that attacked me. I was like, geez, this is like, they're not messing around. It's not just the big baddies anymore. It's like even fairies. Some of these goblins are kicking my ass. So it is like they're leaning in. You got to be stocked up, like you mentioned. You got to be eating the right food in the right areas or for the right situation. They really went all in on that.
Elden
which
Ring
I was like,
you for the pain. Yes.
Yeah.
I do think that also like what it does is like, and maybe this is like the game design where like I at the point where I'm now, I'm like marveling at how frictionless the game is. But I think that that's a part, an aspect of like how much friction there is at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Where like it is like a lot of like constant dying and like constant like messing up and constant failing at puzzles.
Yeah.
And then like as you slowly learn things or as you slowly get items, like a thing that I actually really love about Tears of the Kingdom in comparison to Breath of the Wild is how much I feel that like equipment matters. Yeah. And how much I'm constantly shifting equipment. Like it used to be like basically I would put on one set of clothes.
Wear the cold armor, wear the hot armor.
And I wouldn't change it at all.
Yeah. But honestly, I would leave the climbing gear on most of the time, unless I was going to a hot zone or something. Yeah.
And now like there's like they have all of the old gear, and then they have new, more specific gear
and does really cool looking gear. I've seen all the like some photos I've seen. Like this looks sweet.
And like
or whatever.
It's so great. And like when you're also like at the point where you're leveling up your gear and like certain things are like still like much stronger than others, then you're like, well, I have to equip this because otherwise I'll die. So then like that limits the other like secondary abilities I'll have equipped. And like so like at early on in the game I had only like maxed out one set of equipment. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to be wearing this and have that buff the entire time.
Set bonus too, right?
Well, it's like anytime I'm going up against a nightmare enemy or a boss, I'm just going to be having this. And like, I'm finally at the point now where I'm like, ooh, I can actually like mix and match like the like individual items or like do it specific to a scenario. And like the new like buffs that they added for equipment are just really fun mechanics. Like some of them are things that like I'm really grateful for. Others are things I never considered. And I was like, ooh, I don't know how to apply that, but that seems really fun to think about.
The mix and match is awesome too. I've got like 2 cold resistance pieces with like 1 climbing gear, and they're upgraded 1 level. And I'm like, oh, this is gonna get me by for a little while at least. And like,
and it gets you up a like cliff face in the cold. Like I love, I just love it. And it's a thing that like kind of felt like. It obviously wasn't, but it felt more like an afterthought or a less important part in Breath of the Wild. And now in Tears of the Kingdom, it just feels like a considered like aspect of the game. And like, that's how I feel about like every part of Tears of the Kingdom.
It almost feels like the armor's like obviously used for different purposes, but like almost on the level of like in like Metal Gear Solid 3, how you're like switching your camo all the time. Like, and it was a very active part of the game. You know, it sounds like it's kind of on that, you know, sort of level.
And like, oh man, I just started. Well, when I say just, I mean like what, the past 50 hours? Who knows? Like, I've been playing this game like a nut job.
I don't
you're getting close to 250 last time I checked. You might have even cracked it
right
by now.
But I'm at
that's
the point,
awesome. That's awesome.
Incredible. It's awesome.
Oh my god!
And you haven't even beaten it yet. That's like nuts.
Not even close.
It does not
specifically. Yeah. There's so much like God. We could talk about. We should probably cut this short because we're going long. But like,
well, we'll definitely be talking more about it in the future. But finish what you were going to say for sure.
But like, I remember like Aonuma talked about how he played Skyrim and was like, God, I want to make that game. And this kind of does feel like the like realization of it. Like I remember playing Breath of the Wild and it's like
stuff.
It's like, oh yeah, this is just like Skyrim, and I was like, no, that was nothing like it. Like this is so much more like, and we talked a bit about this, about how like, you know, the way that the NPCs are scripted and lived and like continuous in their stories, like feels way more like Majora's Mask.
A little more lived in,
Like but Majora's Mask was so like scaled down because it could only take place in like a really small setting, and now you can do it at the scale of Breath of the Wild, and like now
because like, a lot of the NPCs in Breath of the Wild felt sort of all like a lot of the encounters were just felt random. Like, oh, here's this random guy running down the path that I talked to that says whatever random thing. Like even in the little bit I played, it was like, oh, this person has a purpose or has at least just has personality. That like
these side like quests and like the fact that they have like an entire section in your like quest like thing as side adventures, which are like much like actual side adventures.
Like
that feels the most like Skyrim of anything, where it's like, no, this is an entire storyline that is not important. Arc. You don't need to do this. Like,
why wouldn't you do it?
Right, because it's fun as shit.
A cool thing.
It rules so hard.
Yes, like the game is whatever you want it to be.
It's almost even like it's almost even like the realization or like the further like of evolution of like how you had to do all those different things to get like the great Master Sword or the big Mega Goron Sword, the Goron Sword, Like it's kind of seems like it's an evolution. You guys almost are talking me into popping this back in, especially because I pulled my TV out of the garage. I pulled my bigger TV out of the garage, so I'm like I could get a little more absorbed in it. Maybe I could throw some headphones on. Randall said a few things here. Well, both you guys, but Randall specifically said a few things. I'm like, do I need to eat some crow here?
It feels like Zelda, Kevin. I'm at a point now where I'm just like, oh my god, it feels like Zelda, and just like I felt with Breath of the Wild, I'm like, oh no, this feels like Zelda. This feels like Zelda 1 Zelda. This is like that sort of Zelda. Like,
and it took a minute for that feeling to click, though, too.
Much like Wind Waker to me.
And Wind Waker, yes.
And that's probably my favorite 3D Zelda, but partially for different, like partially because it's a little simplified and a little easy in some regards. I liked how I just kind of breezed through that game, but I did like the element of just like, oh, there's some treasure buried here. Really cool game. But that does. Randall said a few things there where I'm like, okay, that's if you're telling me that pretty much you're not engaging with the building all that much.
Not much at all.
I know you have to.
I think you literally went to the 2 towers that use all of the building.
It is. There is something to be said about that, like non-linear. You could get off on the wrong foot and have kind of a bad experience, or you could get off on the right foot and have an awesome experience. And because it took a minute with Breath of the Wild for it to click, where I was like, this kind of does feel like Zelda 1. At first, I was like, what the fuck is this game? What is going on here?
Yeah,
I'm
walking around randomly, and I'm mostly just fucking around. Like I said, I didn't get the fucking glider. I didn't get the camera. I'm just doing whatever I want to do. But along the way in this game, because of the way they designed it, I'm hitting the story beats. When I hit the hieroglyphic, corn drawings or whatever, and then there's a Zelda thing, and then I'm like, oh, that's a cool part of the story, and then I feel like, oh yes, that's part of the game that's happening here too. But that's like, I'm not even seeking that out. I'm just like, oh, I'm close enough.
I did that. I did that 100 hours ago.
Feeling too. It's just like it's just so lived in. It's like, again, it's just like, oh, here's an adventure to go off over here. I did get into those, like, those lines, those petroglyphs, or what geoglyphs, I think they call them. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
corn drawings.
So cool. Little ancient aliens action, baby.
Yes.
Love it. Oh man. But so John, you're not have completed this yet, but do you feel like you can sniff the end? Like, is it close, tasted in sight?
Yeah, I've been avoiding the ending for at least 50 hours.
Just like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
like,
that's the only way to play a Zelda game. Any Zelda game, any game for that matter. When I'm having fun, I tend to avoid finishing.
Why would you want to?
I am now at the point where, similar to how I was in Breath of the Wild, where I'm just hunting the, like, top enemies in the game and, like, using that. So that's a little bit of farming. Like, I would definitely say that. But, like, each of those encounters... each of those encounters are like a boss fight that you're, like, setting out to do. Because, Lionel's
it's like
still take forever. Gleeok's, like, take forever. But they're fun.
I've seen some cool clips of those battles where that was one of the things where I was like, that looks kind of fun. And I did have a couple quick combat sections that were fun.
Are Gleeok's the 3D block guys that look like they're from Gunstar Heroes? Are those?
Oh my god! Finding out, like, multiple ways to beat those, like, I mentioned that in our Discord. I think, like, Cardboard Moon was the one who was like, oh, like, you could just use this on that. I was like, god damn it, why didn't I think of that? Of course that's a thing you can do. Like, I was, instead of whatever weird solution, like, cobbled together solution I came up with on the fly. Which still works. Like, it's fine.
Yep.
I don't even know how I came across this, because I think I watched, like, a little bit of it on YouTube. It might have just caught my attention, but it was like, this auto build absolutely destroys the Gleeok or whatever. And it had some dumb thumbnail, but I clicked on it anyways. And it's like, they just basically took, like, a long, like, platform, like one of those, like, concrete slabs, two of those, and made, like, a 90-degree perpendicular angle and a square one on top. And they just use that as, like, a shield to block all the fire that the Gleeok shoots. Sense. And then they just use the ascend technique to, like, shoot through that top square and then just start blasting the Gleeok and then duck back around it. It was like, it's a little tedious, but I was like, this works.
Yeah,
it's like this crazy. Simple auto build. That ascend is really cool. I've even seen, like, there's been so many people, like, on just seeing, like, people posting clips online of, like, hey, here's my take on the ascend, even in, like, 2D games. Like, I saw somebody even posted, like, I don't know if they're, like, working on a game or whatever, but it looked kind of like a Smash Brothers style gameplay, but with, like, a Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom style Link. And they were, like, had that Ascend feature plugged in and, like, had the paraglider. I was like, this looks, whoever did that, I'll see if I can find it, actually, if I can put it in the episode description, because it was seriously.
Playing any open world exploration game without Ascend is miserable now. Because then it's like, this is like, oh, this is just poor design. I should be able to just zip through the ceiling. I
already came all the way down here. I already did it.
Like, it's really interesting because, like, I think that Ascend in particular is, like, the ability that, like, really calls into question, like, okay, what needs to be realistic in a video game
for real, though,
for it to be, like, fun? Because, like, the paraglider that you can pull out at any time is not realistic and put away, and, like, but it's fun, and that got added to everything. And being able to, like, visualize platforms and, like, visualize, like, objects that you can interact with and, like, oh yeah, I want to be on top of this now, but I don't want to have to spend the time to climb around and, like, I think I
accidentally fell off this thing. Right. Not that it's not that you're able to do it in every situation, but in a lot of the shrines,
the situations you can't do are specific puzzles that you need to solve around. Like, it's just
built around it.
And, like, like, the idea of, like, what is, like, I keep using the term friction, but, like, what is a, like, source of friction that is necessary for the game to be fun, and what is a source of friction that we can just eliminate and, like, is, like, not needed?
Yeah.
That's fair.
What are we doing because video games have always done that versus what can we actually accomplish here if we just start fresh?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
You guys got me tempted. I got
Kevin. If you want a step-by-step thing to get auto build, and then you
that's actually that might not be a bad call, Kevin.
For real, that I wouldn't be, because at this point, you know, I pretty much had resigned myself to just packing the game up and going maybe someday, but you know, not anytime soon. But again, now that I got this jank set up, you know, admittedly, but it's still like, hey, I got a bigger TV that's easier to see, and I can get a little more immersed in the situation. So
because
I don't know, some of these nights.
Randall, do you want to take your headphones off for a second? I can tell him some of the things that auto build lets you do.
Fair enough.
All right.
Okay.
You can. It'll give you a like schematic for like various items that like just so then like also if you don't even have those pieces, it'll spend the zoanite, which is the ore, like the specific
like the currency
ore.
Sort of. Yeah.
And it'll just use that. You don't even need to have the items in your inventory. It'll just do it automatically for you, and it'll be done.
Okay. That's
all right.
That's a pretty good.
Let's bring Randall back in.
Good.
All right,
that's a pretty good. That makes a difference. Yeah,
yeah,
that makes
it's
sound
a
little
huge
easier,
difference.
a little less tedious.
Yes, like auto build is
tedious.
a great thing, but like I get why it's a, you know, like we're not going to give you this right off the bat.
Yeah, we want to force you into using these mechanics first a bit more, right?
Yeah, but they probably, the way you're describing it, it does sound like they maybe could have found a way to, like, after you got off those floating sky islands at the beginning and you got through the brute force thing that they threw you into, like, okay, now I'll let you just start building stuff so that it's like, if you were grading against that mechanic, you can feel that sense of relief, which, like, you had mentioned, like, oh, once you get off the island, it totally changed. And I was like, I can't, you know, it wasn't quite the relief I was waiting for. So I was like, it still feels the same enough where I'm not quite sucked in, but yeah, I do think that would be a welcome thing to just say, hey, here you go.
Because, like, specifically, I'm thinking of, like, the 2 towers that you had to deal with. And, like, literally, if you had done, like, the auto build, like, quest line or whatever, like, it just would have solved it. Like,
here's all the stuff. Boom. Done. Yeah. Because, I just brute force it most of the time. So, but that's on me, too. You know, it's me, like, kind of actively choosing. I don't feel like engaging with this. I want to engage with it at the minimal level required, you know? So that's
But also, I brute force it, but I think that the brute forcing is fun. So,
it can be sometimes. It can be
creativity in the brute forcing sometimes.
Yeah, there for sure is. There is a sense of fun of, like, that's not at all what was intended, or you know, maybe they ran into this, but, like, okay, that was almost cheap, but again, and because it's so stuffed, it's not like, oh, I beat the final boss in a super shitty, cheap way, even though you probably can. You know, I'm sure there's like, I built this thing and I can crush it, but who knows? Who knows? But
would not surprise
I'm sure we'll be digging into some more Tears of the Kingdom in the future. Anybody have any more last thoughts they want to get in before we wrap it up? Or
no, I'm going to shut up.
Yeah, I'll save it for the future because, boy, if John has this much time into it and I'm into this like I am now, then
and you're an equally thorough player, I feel. So maybe not quite as quickly as John, but definitely an equally thorough player. So
a game that rewards my worst tendencies. Of, like,
hey, man, but at least it rewards them instead of just having you like eating it up and just like being tedious. You know, at least you're having fun doing it. So
it's so much fun.
Yeah. Heck yeah. But I guess we can wrap it up there this week for the video games chit chat. And we'll catch you next week. We're on the internet at pursuingpixels.com and virtually anywhere else that you can think of. And otherwise we'll catch you next week. And until then, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We gotta save this.
We have to save it.
I'm just glad you got that paraglider now, man.
I do have a paraglider. Yeah, that helps my cause.
I can't imagine.
That definitely makes the game, I can only imagine, much easier or much more fun, and
a little bit more
easier to get around.
Yeah, and we will get into it in terms of like whatever asynchronous storytelling or asynchronous like gameplay unlock stuff.
Definitely,
but, like, I'm in love with that. Like,
Me too.
Love the fact that like. I like did something and I was like, man, I probably was supposed to do this like really early in the game. And I was just like, no, I'm fucking off and going to a complete like the first thing I did in like once I got out of the like beginning area was I saw a falling star and I was like, those were a bitch to get in Breath of the Wild. Like I'm gonna I'm just going to make a beeline there before I talk to anyone. And like, so the very first thing I did was just like, make my way. I was like, I see it. I can get it. I know I can cross this river. And like, then once I got it, I was like, all right, let's go talk to the NPCs and let them, like, Zelda is like, or Link's just like, hey, I know we've got some stuff, but I really got to get this star piece.
I know the world's about to end in 5 seconds, but I know this weird mummy corpse just woke up, but
I need to add this to my inventory.
Guys, I know I'm going to use this in crafting in like 100 hours. So.
Absolutely.